The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. My dear sisters and brothers, these are the words of God that we must listen to and reflect on during this week. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. In today's gospel, you heard that soon after John the Baptist is arrested, Jesus begins his ministry, his mission, his work. He withdraws to the north of Israel in a district called Galilee and chooses to live in a small place called Capernaum. Not Jerusalem, in the south of Israel, not Bethlehem, not even Nazareth, but in Capernaum. So our first reflection could be, why Capernaum? Why not Jerusalem, which was full of Jews who considered themselves followers of pure Judaism? For us who live in Goa, it is not difficult to understand the context of Capernaum, because like Goa, Capernaum is a place by the sea. Capernaum, like Goa, has coastal areas. There are beaches, so-called ports, riverbanks, etc. And as you have experienced, any coastal area attracts people from all over and of all faiths, not only for tourism, but also for trade and commerce. And so in Capernaum, as in Goa today, there was a blend of different cultures, different religions, and different peoples. Originally, in Capernaum and in the region of Galilee, there were the two Jewish tribes called Zebulun and Naphtali that you heard about in the first reading and also in the Gospel of Matthew. Of the 12 tribes of Israel, Zebulun and Naphtali were in the north of Israel, in Galilee. These two tribes were defeated by an enemy called the Assyrians. And the Assyrians settled in Galilee, but what was even worse, these Assyrians brought along with them their religions, their cults, their faith, their ideals, and their gods. That is why Galilee in the north of Israel is called the land of the nations, the land of Gentiles. There were not only Jews there, but there were people of various faiths. The tribes of the southern Israel, that is, the tribes around Jerusalem, they were not happy with the tribes of the northern Israel because they thought that these northern Israelites have diluted their faith. They have diluted Judaism, and therefore they have not accepted or gone far away from the customs of the law of Moses. The Jews of Jerusalem viewed Galilee and the northern Israelites negatively, and they called them as the land of the pagans, the land of darkness. But in the first reading, we heard Isaiah prophesying that people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. And in the gospel reading, Jesus, who is this great light, chooses to begin his ministry in Capernaum, that is, in Galilee, and not in Jerusalem. Before we draw a reflection from the first reading and the gospel, let us go to the second reading, which was read to us in Konkani from St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians. Now, if you are aware, or if you are not aware, Corinth, which is a place in Greece, is also like Goa, that is, by the sea. There are beaches and harbors in Corinth. which made it a commercial center in Greece and a crossroad of diverse cultures. At the same time, the city of Corinth in the ancient times had a reputation of loose living and immorality, so much so that in ancient Greek language, to Corinthianize meant to live a loose life. To be like a Corinthian meant to live an immoral life. Unfortunately, and I hope this does not happen, but if certain unhealthy activities in the coastal areas of Goa continue as they are, our fate could be the same as that of ancient Corinth. But why was this happening in Corinth, despite the missionary work of Paul, of Peter, and all the other missionaries that went to Corinth? Because the Christians in Corinth, who were supposed to be the light of Christ in the midst of different cultures and religions, were divided and they were fighting with one another. In the second reading in Konkani, you heard that some Christians were saying, I belong to Paul. The others were saying, I belong to Apollos. And still others were saying, I belong to Cephas. Paul was actually angry with the Corinthians and rebuked them by asking them if Christ was divided. In Goa today, Christians who are invited to be the light of Christ in the midst of the multicultural diversity of Goa also seem to be divided between different confessions: Catholics, Orthodox, Protestants, Evangelicals, the Pentecostals, etc. That is why this week is a very important week in the church, because in this week we pray for Christian unity. Every year from the 18th of January right up to the feast of St. Paul on the 25th of January, we celebrate the octave of Christian unity all throughout the world. Let us now return to the gospel reading. Jesus does not break with the Old Testament scriptures or with the old customs, but fulfills them by choosing to begin his ministry in Capernaum, in order to be the light for the people who walked in darkness. He has not only come for the Jews, but for all. His mission is universal. How does Jesus fulfill his mission? As we see in the gospel, Jesus begins his ministry by building a human community. Instead of expecting people to come to the synagogues and other worship places, he goes to meet people where they are by the sea, and he puts himself at their service. Instead of commanding and ordering, he teaches and cares for the sick. He calls Simon, Andrew, James, John to be fishers of people and not just followers of one another. This is the church Jesus envisioned, a church full of leaders who walk with one another, learning from one another, and not mere consumers who pick what they want. My dear sisters and brothers, we have been reflecting on the fact that our state of Goa has some similarities with Capernaum, where Jesus begins his ministry, and with Corinth, where Paul preaches the gospel. Because of its geographical location, Goa has a huge influx of people from all over and all walks of life. Like Jesus and the first disciples, we are called to begin our ministry in the midst of these differences and divergent opinions. Like Paul, we are called to walk together with other Christian communities and other faiths, religious faiths, not forgetting that they too have something to offer us, to teach us. In the church, we are called to be leaders, and a leader is someone who accepts and who learns from the other. Unfortunately, we mistakenly think that the church only needs monetary help, that the church only needs financial support. No, the church today has a greater need for human resources, human services, Yes, the church also needs funds to maintain itself. As in the Gospels, you see Jesus invites himself at different dinners at different places. For example, Jesus sees a man on a tree and he will say, Zacchaeus, come down, I want to come and dine with you. Yes, funds are important, but the church is a community of leaders consisting of not only the clergy, but also the laity. You have noticed today a number of priests from the Jesuit province of Goa at the altar and among you. Our mission statement is to build human communities based on the kingdom values of justice, hope, and love. We are gathered here today with our own families to thank them, first of all, for giving generously a family member to join the Jesuits, and some of them have given their only son to join the Jesuits, and secondly, for their continued support in various ways. Well, not all of us may be able to join the Jesuits or the diocese or the religious and other sister congregations, but according to today's gospel, we are all called by our names, Simon, James, John, Peter, etc., etc., and invited to be the light in the darkness. Therefore, your goodwill services, talents, and skills contribute to this light. To be more concrete, if you do not know what to do with your services or how your services could be useful to the church, do not hesitate to contact any one of us, because we Jesuits believe in your potential. My dear sisters and brothers, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Jesus Christ has passed on this light to us. People from all walks of life come to the state of Goa, not only for tourism and commerce, but deep inside they are looking for this light. And in return, they too have something to offer us. Let us be the light for them, and thereby enrich the light in us by accepting what they give us from deep within. Anything that is given from deep within comes from God. म्हज्या मोगाळ भयणी भावांनो, काळोखांत आसलोल्या लोकान एक व्हड उजवाड देखलो. काळोखांत आसलोल्या लोकान एक व्हड उजवाड देखलो. हो उजवाड जावन आसा जेजू ख्रिस्त, आनी ताणेन हो उजवाड आमकां सगळ्यांक फावो केला. हो उजवाड आमच्यांनी आमकांच दवरूंक जायना. आमी तो दुसऱ्यांक पोरगोटूंक जाय, आनी दुसऱ्यांक पोरगोट्टाना आमकां हो उजवाड कितें तें चड समजतलें. आमच्या गोंयांत जायते लोक दुसऱ्या गांवांत सावन येतात. आमी तांच्या जिवितांत हो उजवाड जावया, आनी ते आमकां कितें शिकयतात तें स्विकार करुया. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Amen.